conclusion, if you can just summarize briefly Gershom Scholem's greatest legacy.
I think that I would say two main things. One is that he really is the person who created, and this was pointed out by Buber, he kind of single-handedly created a new academic discipline of Jewish mysticism. By the way, I should just point out, Jewish mysticism, I think, is a term that he made up. And not all the scholars like it for various reasons, but we'll leave that for another discussion. There were academics before Scholem who wrote about Kabbalah, but it was, a little bit here and a little bit there. It wasn't their main thing. He was the first person who set out to create a new topic of study and brought it with him into Hebrew University when the university was just beginning in 1925, which was not to be taken for granted that they even agreed to having such a field of studies. And it shows a lot about his reputation as a brilliant young scholar that they agreed to kind of take this gamble and open up a Kabbalah section within the Jewish studies department. So that's first of all. And he's, of course, he had many, many students, and those students have had many students. And now I think all over the world, certainly in Israel and all the universities in Israel and in all the good universities in the States and Europe, where you have Jewish studies, it's very, very common to have someone who's also teaching some aspect of Kabbalah. It's really become a very, very mainstream part of Jewish studies, and you can't imagine it today being otherwise. So that's sort of in the broadest sense. Moving in more deeply, I would say something that I alluded to earlier in our discussion, which was his mapping out of all of the Kabbalistic material as much as he could. The fact that he wrote bibliographic works such as Bibliographia Kabbalistica, or his description of all the Kabbalistic manuscripts, and the way he treated many, many Kabbalistic authors and manuscripts that were not very well known before his time. People didn't know who'd written certain books. And he really set out and put out there the big picture of what's out there. And then he didn't get to study it all. He didn't have time in one lifetime to study everything in depth. But he let us know what's there. And as Yosef Dan wrote, even the creation of his library itself was already, in a sense, is a mapping out of the Kabbalistic world. He arranged his library according to the chronological development of Kabbalah, first the primary sources, then the research material. And if you come to the library, you come to the Scholem collection and walk around, you basically can visually see in front of you what are all the different kinds of Kabbalah, periods of Kabbalah, places of Kabbalah, and then you can begin to analyze, well, what's been studied and what still hasn't been studied, what's left for me to work on, and there's plenty. So I think that he did a huge service to future scholarship by creating the library that enables the research and including his notes in his books, many of which were clearly written not for himself, but for posterity. And then on top of all of that, so then you have his content studies about the Zohar, about the Ari, about Hasidism, and a huge amount that he wrote about Shabtai Tzvi and the Sabbatian movement and Jewish Messianism, which some people would say then pushed the direction of Kabbalah studies too much in sort of the antinomian radical direction, and it's been overstudied, or it's been given more prominence than it deserves. So that's a separate big discussion. But he put that on the table also and tried to do it objectively. In other words, until his time, basically, Shabtai Tzvi had either been written about by his followers who deified him or his detractors who hated him absolutely and thought he was the absolute incarnation of evil that had almost destroyed Judaism. Scholem said, I'm going to read all the documents about Shabtai Tzvi and try to tell the story of what really happened and not be judgmental about it. Whether he succeeded in being objective or not, that's, we could debate, but that was also a huge contribution to scholarship as well.
This has been absolutely fascinating. It's just, we always say, it's just the tip of the iceberg here. There's so much here, and urge all our viewers and listeners to go online, and when visiting Jerusalem, not right now, but in another month? Is that fair enough?
We're still open now. We're open till the end of August. We're closing the beginning of September, and we're reopening apparently towards the end of October, a week or so after the end of this Sukkot holiday.
Okay.
So we'll have about a 6-week closure. But so if you're in Jerusalem now, come now quickly, and if not, after Sukkot.
Okay. Rabbi Dr. Leshem, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care.